Hey, good morning. Welcome to a Sunday edition of Morning Scone. Very glad to have you with us with the baseball regular season over. We're brought to you by Boudreaux's, of course, founded by a good guy named Darren from Homa, Vanderbilt Catholic shout out. And you got the Bloody Mary mix if you're starting your Sunday off right. And then you've got the margarita mix if you're going to have a party around the pool today. And we got... And we got Drew with us today as well. You want to say hi to the people? Can you say hi? Mama. They're watching you. Can you say hi? Mama. Mama. Ooh. See Mama later, okay? All right. So, really, after yesterday was such a... Cool. He loves to watch me work. After such a great day. See you later, bud. Go watch Mickey. Man, it was such a great show yesterday where we were talking about a fantastic day for LSU athletics, with the baseball team beating Auburn and Auburn and Casey Mize, and then of course Joe Burrow committing to LSU. It was quite the opposite day on Saturday for LSU baseball. You know, whenever you go out, I need to check the final score just to make sure that I have it right. When you lose 14-5, there's just not a whole ton to talk about, specifically with the game. And yep, go see Pete, buddy. There's not a whole ton to talk about specifically with the game. I mean, it got out of hand in a hurry, and it's just kind of what it is. And the really disappointing thing is the way the game started. It kind of felt like you were going to be in one of those heavyweight matches where it just punch, counter, punch the whole game. That's the way it felt from the onset. Both pitchers got through the first without allowing a run. LSU gets on the board in the second. Auburn responds. They get two. They're up 2-1. LSU responds with the Coombs homer. You're tied, and you're feeling like, all right, here we go. Well, you go into the fourth, and that's when things fell apart for LSU. So there's really two things, specifically with the game, that I would mention, for me anyway, that I thought were impactful, that might have changed the outcome. Probably with the way Auburn played and the way LSU didn't, it probably wouldn't have mattered. But there's two things in particular, and one of them actually sets up the SEC tournament. First, though, offensively, when LSU got the one run in the second, they led off the second single by Cabrera and Slaughter. So you get first and second with nobody out. And then Coombs struck out, Bo Jordan flew out, and so you got two outs now for Brant Broussard, and he doubled. And so you got to run home, and you got second and third for Hal Hughes, and you feel like, man, a base hit here, and you put up a crooked number, and maybe the whole dynamic of the game shifts. You know, now Auburn feels like they have to be a little more urgent, because keep in mind, Auburn came into yesterday's game under 500, got a good RPI, but you know, can a team under 500 get into regional play? Probably with their RPI, but still, you know, Butch Thompson, the Auburn coach, is probably taking the tack Maneri did once LSU was down, and you're making some more urgent moves and being a little more desperate and taking some risks. But the shoe was on the other foot. Hughes flew out. LSU only gets one. Auburn comes back in the bottom of the second and gets two, and then it happened the way it did. So the other thing, so hitting in the clutch, and then of course just the inability at times to get the homer in that spot, which is exactly what Auburn did. Of course, they came up with the 3-run homer against Fontenot, and then a 2-run shot to get the 5-run fourth, and that's just the way the game basically ended at that point when it was 7-2. But they kept on. So the other question really from yesterday was bringing in Fontenot. And look, I think every time if a coach makes a decision, whatever it may be, if it's using a pinch hitter in a certain situation, or if it's, you know, a defensive adjustment, or if whatever pitcher he brings in, he's doing so with some intention, right? He's looking at stats, he's looking at a scouting report, he's looking at something that suggests, okay, this is the favorable matchup at this point. It's not just random. There's a purpose and a reason for which everything they do, and if it works, it's brilliant. If it doesn't, largely they get chastised. With that, and I don't mean this to be, you know, the Monday morning quarterback or armchair quarterback, whatever. In hindsight, of course, is 2020. But I didn't understand. I understand why he brought in Fontenot, and here's why he did. You got runners at the corners with nobody out. Levis was struggling, and you're in a tie ball game. Fontenot throws a fastball with a lot of sink, and he's also a really good strikeout option. So best case scenario, what Maneri's hoping for there is bring in Fontenot, get a strikeout, then get a ground ball double play. That's what he's hoping for. because that's what Fontenot does. Fontenot lives low in the zone, and he's less likely to give up a homer. Well, Fontenot obviously didn't have his good stuff. He was missing spots. He left the pitch up. The one that Holland hit over the wall. If you watch Fiducia set up low and away, the ball comes high and in, and Holland rips it over the monster and left. I mean, it was one of those days. You got to hit your spots, and Fontenot did, and he left things up, and he got drilled. So I understand why Maneri went to Fontenot in that spot. But at the same time, considering you're in a tie ball game, I'm going with my best option. I'm going all in to win that game yesterday. And for me, that would have been Nick Bush. And I kind of feel like, especially since Bush didn't pitch this weekend, Maneri was saving Bush, maybe even if only in the back of his mind, for Tuesday in the SEC tournament. And I think that might have cost him yesterday. It's impossible to know, but I really feel like Labus got you through 3. You're in a 2-2 ball game. If you hand the ball to Bush there, I think Bush can get you through the 6th or maybe even the 7th. And then you have lined up, you can go to Fontenot. You have Beck available. You have Todd Peterson who was available again yesterday. And, of course, you have Bain. Point is, you had those options there. But just to stick with Bush or Fontenot, once Fontenot gave up the 5 spot, it was almost like Maneri said, okay, well, we're just going to concede this one and we're going to play for Tuesday. And I don't know if that was the right call. I don't think it was, but now that it went the way it did, and of course they just finished the game. Beck came in, but then they finished up with Clay Moffitt. I'm trying to see if Clay finished. I can't remember if they brought in anybody else. Yeah, that's right. They brought in Gilbert. Gilbert pitched an inning in 2/3 at the end. So, I mean, you had all those options, and they just kind of got through the game. So that it tells you, obviously, they're going to start Bush on Tuesday in the SEC tournament against Mississippi State. So, I don't know. Again, when it's 14-5, it's so hard to try to touch on individual things in that ball game because it got so out of hand. But when it was still a ball game, I think those are 2 things specifically that happened that maybe could have altered the outcome of the game if it went differently. But more than likely, it was Auburn's day. You tip your cap to them and you move on. So LSU finishes the regular season at 15-15 in conference play, and if you look at the standings, LSU finishes 8th in the overall standings, 4th in the West. They're tied with Auburn at 15-15, but of course Auburn has the tiebreaker. But to go to show you, man, just how odd this season's been. Ole Miss won the West. Ole Miss this weekend took 2 out of 3 from Alabama, and Arkansas lost 2 out of 3 against Georgia, which is just stunning. And then Mississippi State, they finished 15-15 as well after sweeping #1 Florida. I mean, Florida's the most dominant team in college baseball this year, and they got swept in Starkville by Mississippi State. Now, grant you, Florida already had everything locked up that it was playing for, and Mississippi State needed that series to keep its hopes alive. They got to 15-15 in conference now. But what a wacky weekend. And we talked about yesterday, the thing LSU wanted to avoid was the 8 seed, because if you're the 8 seed, then if you win on Tuesday, then you play Florida on Wednesday. And, of course, LSU, the way it falls, they fall into the 8 seed. So LSU's going to play Mississippi State on Tuesday. 4:30 is Central is the scheduled first pitch. It will be on air with AFR. And if you remember back, LSU played Mississippi State in Baton Rouge in the 3rd weekend of the regular season. And they beat Connor Pilkington on Friday night. Gilbert lost on Saturday 4-1, and then they came back with Mikhail Hilliard and they won 4-0. It was a shutout victory for LSU in Game 3, and they won that series. But that was the 3rd weekend of conference play, so you're talking about almost 2 months ago that series took place in Baton Rouge. Now this is going to be on the road, of course, in Hoover, and LSU under Paul Maneri's played wonderfully in Hoover. Some people call it the Paul Maneri Invitational. But this LSU team hasn't won away from home, and they're going to have to find a way to win a game, because if you look at their postseason hopes, we talked to Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball earlier this week, and Daniel James, I appreciate the comment, man. I hope so too. We talked to Kendall Rogers, and D1 Baseball had LSU in its last 5 in. And we went through every scenario as of what would have happened this weekend. He said, look, if you lose the Auburn series and then you lose Tuesday in Hoover, he said, don't give the committee a reason to keep you out. Like, you're in right now, but don't give them a reason to keep you out. He said, losing the Auburn series and then losing on Tuesday in Hoover, that would be a reason for them to keep you out. So in my opinion, Tuesday is a must-win for LSU. Tuesday is the season. If they win Tuesday, they're in. 15-15 in conference is generally enough to make regional play. But for this LSU team with the RPI so low, they need to go win a game in Hoover. They need to go beat Mississippi State. And then if you win Tuesday, you get into the double elimination portion of the tournament. So after Tuesday, then theoretically, you could set your pitching rotation. Even if you just sort of tip your cap and concede the Florida game and whole staff it or whatever you have to do, then you can come back in your elimination game on Thursday and probably pitch Zach Hess and maybe have a good shot of winning that game and advancing to Friday. So, and so then if you would have won 2 games, then obviously then you're in. But Tuesday is it for LSU. If, in my estimation, if you win Tuesday, you're in. If you lose Tuesday, you're not making regional play. So it's it's a massive game for LSU on Tuesday, and somehow they just got to find a way to go win a game away from home. And I don't know if they can do it. I'm curious to see who Mississippi State is going to pitch. I don't know that that's been announced just yet. But for this LSU baseball team to play on, and selfishly, I want them to because as a radio host, I want content. Last year when they played to mid-June, it was fantastic because basically it was like mid-June, you had 2 weeks, then you're at SEC Media Days 2 weeks into July. So, and the Saints report to training camp. So it's fantastic whenever LSU baseball plays deep into the season. But I'd love for them to go make a regional and see if they can go win a weekend. But they got to win. They got to win Tuesday. They got to find a way to win Tuesday in Hoover for that to happen. So. A tough one for LSU baseball. Been a tough season. At this point, you are. We've said it before. You are who you are, and a lot of people have brought up the midweek games hurting the RPI, and the reality of it is it's not the midweek games. It's the road losses. I mean, LSU, for the first time since 2003, won every single home conference series, and they lost every road conference series this year. It's just amazing, the Jekyll and Hyde nature of this team. And Arkansas happened to Arkansas too. Arkansas was like 30-3 at home this year, and then they just couldn't win road series. It's just amazing how sometimes it happens. Like if all of the postseason went through Fayetteville, I'd pick Arkansas to win the national championship. But they can't seem to win away from home, and they lost this weekend at Georgia as well. You can look at Florida. I think Florida had 6 midweek losses this year, and they're the best team in college baseball. It just doesn't hurt them. You could look at Missouri, which went undefeated in the midweek, and they got 10 conference wins, and they're not going to sniff regional. So I know we have the midweek conversation a lot. It's not the midweek games; it's the road games. The way the RPI works is that it skews more heavily for road wins, sort of as a benefit to the schools from the Midwest and the Northeast because they have to play the whole first month of the season on the road. So road wins are weighted more heavily in the RPI, and LSU was terrible on the road this year, which is why their RPI is what it is. That question was just, is this a result of being a young team? The road woes, part of it for sure. I think this team really lacks the Kramer, the Cole, the Greg Dykman, the Lang, the Poche, the guy that would be the emotional leader of the team. I think they've waited all year for that guy to step up on this team, and it hasn't happened. But the flip side of it is, too, keep in mind, you lost Alex Lang, who was the first-round draft pick. You lost Jared Poche, who's the winningest pitcher in the history of LSU baseball. You lost Eric Walker to injury, who's a freshman All-American. You lost Kramer and Cole, which was your senior middle infield. You lost Greg Dykman, who was your home run threat. You lost Mike Papierski, who was a brick wall behind home plate, and that's been such a problem for this team this year all season. They've more than doubled the number of pass balls from Pap a year ago. I think he had 7 all year. They had 7 in the first 2 weekends. It's just this. They're just not what they were a year ago, and that's very evident. That's not to say they're not talented. They have a lot that they can build on for next year. And I really like the prospects of a rotation that has Eric Walker back, Mikhail Hilliard, and then Labus or Stores. I mean, that's 4 starting pitchers next year that you go, okay, you can work with that for sure. I think you're going to lose Hess. You're going to lose, almost certainly you're going to lose Watson. It's unfortunate. Greg just said JUCO catcher's the number 1 priority. You're losing Coombs, so does Fiducia improve? I don't know. We'll see if they have another catcher on the roster, someone that they feel like can emerge into that spot. But they definitely have to get better with a defensive catcher. So or a freshman that can do it. I mean, let's not forget Papierski stepped in right away and was a defensive. Micah Gibbs played catcher as a true freshman. If you're great defensively, you can get in there and do it. And you can sacrifice the bat if you feel like you have enough bats through the lineup. you'll have Josh Smith back next year as well. So I mean, I hate to do like the post-mortem, like the next year thing already. They still got a game to play Tuesday. If they win it, then they're going to play in regionals, and that's what you want ultimately. But to the question, was youth injuries? Yeah, this team just, and it happens sometimes. They just lack the guy that that they were hoping to step up and just lead the team. So LSU and Mississippi State Tuesday, 4:30-ish. Things rarely, if ever, run on time in Hoover, so I'm hoping we push that back as late as possible so that way it doesn't interfere with AFR directly. But in any event, we'll certainly be talking about it. Until then, hey, if you're just joining us, super grateful for Boudreaux's mixes for sponsoring Morning Scone now. Darren is a guy who founded the company. He's a Homa guy, Vanderbilt Catholic. He reached out and was like, hey, man, I love watching Morning Scone every day. He's like, I listen to it, watch it, on my way to work. Mentioned to me his company. He's like, can I sponsor Morning Scone? I'm like, absolutely. So they got the Bloody Mary mix and they've got the Margarita mix. You can find it in Baton Rouge at Alexander's Highland Market. That's at the corner of Highland and Old Perkins. It's right across from Blue Bayou. Both Calandros, Perkins and Mid-City, and then Calvin. So if you're going to be brunching it this Sunday, go pick up the Bloody Mary mix. If you're going to be hanging out by the pool or wherever you may be, ball games, go check out the Margarita mix and have a good time. And hey, you want to tell everybody bye? You want to tell everybody on Morning Scone bye? Come see.
Mom.
Come see. Come tell everybody bye.
Mom.
He wants to go to the mall. He likes to go ride the elevator at the mall. That's my kid. All right. Thanks again to Boudreaux's. Y'all follow them on social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll tag them in all these posts whenever I publish Morning Scone. But in the meantime, y'all have a fantastic Sunday. Be great to each other. And we'll talk tomorrow on Monday's Morning Scone.